Welcome back to another edition of The Explainer. Today, we are taking on a genuinely fascinating and frankly incredibly practical journey. Our core goal for this session, we want to fundamentally rewire how you perceive financial value. I mean, let's be real. The financial world is packed with complex jargon that's intentionally designed to make it feel intimidating, right? Well, today, we are stripping all of that away. We're going to replace the noise with crystal clear foundational truths drawn directly from our source material. We are looking at a framework that will completely shift how you view every single dollar, euro, or peso you interact with. Okay, let's dive into this.
Here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at how money is just energy. Second, the ultimate pocket rule. Third, business versus everyday life. Fourth, the real estate trap. And finally, number 5, the spiritual check.
Starting with Section 1, money is just energy. Let's get into this philosophical shift.
As our source material beautifully establishes right out of the gate, money is just energy. It is simply a physical tool. I want you to really think about what money actually represents in your normal day-to-day life. When you go to work, what are you doing? You're trading your physical time, your brain power, your literal kinetic energy. And in return for that output, you receive money. So if you think about it, that money in your bank account is essentially stored potential energy. But more importantly, our source emphasizes that it is meant to be our servant. Money is not this towering entity that should control your life. Rather, it's basically a battery, and it's a battery that you have to consciously direct to power your life. To be truly aware of how money works, we absolutely need to understand its physicality, how it actually moves and functions out there in the real world. Setting up this philosophical baseline right now is absolutely crucial because it prepares us to honestly, and maybe a little brutally, evaluate how we are putting this stored energy to use every single day.
Matt brings us to Section 2, the ultimate pocket rule. Let's track the flow.
So the crucial point is this ultimate, binary definition right here. This is the rule that will govern the rest of our explainer today. You see, traditional finance intentionally complicates things, right? You've got amortization schedules, depreciation, theoretical market valuations, EBITDA, all this stuff. But we are stripping literally all of that away for normal people. An asset is simply something that puts money in your pocket. It generates cash. That's it. Full stop. A liability is the exact opposite. It is something that takes money out of your pocket. The pocket rule focuses entirely on the raw, undeniable physicality of money. Does it put cash in, or does it take cash out? It's that simple. If it drains your wallet, it's a liability, and honestly, it doesn't matter what a bank or some fancy financial advisor might want to call it.
Section 3. Business versus everyday life. Let's see how this plays out in different contexts.
Now that we have our ultimate pocket rule locked in, let's look at how it applies differently across the professional sphere and our day-to-day lives. The context might change, but the core mechanism remains exactly the same. Let's look at the business row first. In the business world, an asset isn't just a vague concept on a balance sheet. It's real. It is a piece of heavy machinery that actively manufactures products to sell. It is proprietary software that reliably sells monthly subscriptions. It's putting cash directly into the company's pocket. A business liability, on the other hand, isn't just a standard bank loan. Think bigger. It's payroll for redundant roles. It is that expensive, flashy office space downtown that just sits completely empty because all the employees are working from home now. Those take money out. Now let's shift down to everyday life. For normal people, an asset is still something actively generating income. This could be a rental apartment you own, dividend-paying stocks, royalties from a book you wrote years ago, or an active side hustle where you're selling crafts online. The money is flowing in. Conversely, personal liabilities are what the source famously refers to as gastos, those inevitable daily consumer expenses. We are talking about car loans, credit card interest, or, those 5 different streaming subscriptions you pay for every month but barely even watch. Whether you are a multinational corporation or just an individual trying to get by, the undeniable truth is exactly the same. You either own things that feed you or you own things that eat you.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4, the real estate trap. This is where things get really interesting.
Let me ask you a very direct question, just as the source does. I want you to really think about this. Is your house and the land it sits on an asset or a liability? From the time we are kids, our parents, banks, and society at large constantly condition us to believe that a house is our single greatest asset. We're told that buying land is always, unequivocally, a smart financial move. But if we strictly apply our ultimate pocket rule, the one we just talked about, we have to challenge this deeply ingrained preconceived notion.
This comparison right here creates instant cognitive dissonance for a lot of people. Imagine a house.
If you own that house and you have tenants living in it who pay you rent every single month, well, that physical structure is generating income. It is actively putting money in your pocket. Therefore, it is definitively an asset. But if you take those exact same bricks, the exact same roof, and the exact same plot of land and you simply live in it yourself, it suddenly becomes a liability. The physical house hasn't changed at all, but the flow of cash is completely reversed. It is now taking money out of your pocket.
Let's ground this concept in gritty, everyday reality. When you own the house you live in, the money drain is relentless, isn't it? What happens when a pipe bursts in the middle of the night? You take money out of your pocket to fix it. You don't live in a house without paying for utilities. You are paying the monthly water bill, the electrical bill, the mandatory homeowner's insurance, the property taxes, the cost of a new roof every 20 years, the landscaping. The list goes on and on. Every single month, just to exist in that home, money is hemorrhaging from your pocket. According to our strict pocket rule, that undeniably makes the home you live in a liability, not an asset.
Now, I know exactly what you're thinking right now. It's the most common objection out there, and the source addresses it directly. But what if the house or the land has been used for, say, 10 years, and it goes up in value? Doesn't that make it an asset? That is the traditional argument we've all been taught to repeat since day one.
But here is the reality. Banking on property value appreciation is never a sure thing. It is entirely a case-by-case basis that is completely dependent on the market. Sure, the value could theoretically go up, but you do not control the broader economic forces. Think about unexpected interest rate hikes that completely crush buyer demand, or sudden zoning changes in your city, or just slow neighborhood degradation over time. Relying on an unpredictable, uncontrollable market to eventually put money in your pocket someday far in the future, that is a very dangerous financial game to play.
And this brilliantly illustrates why relying on theoretical market value is a trap. Life happens, right? And when emergencies hit, liquidity is what truly matters. The source gives some very real, painful examples of this. Unexpected financial crises hit the global economy. Or worse, a family member gets sick and you suddenly need cash immediately to pay for medical bills. In those devastating, high-stress moments, you cannot afford to wait for perfect market conditions. If your wealth is entirely trapped in a house that isn't generating cash, you are incredibly vulnerable. People in these situations are often forced to sell the land or the house right then and there, and almost always well below the market value they had built up in their heads. Because the property didn't actively generate income when you desperately needed it, it was never an actual asset.
And by the way, this absolutely applies to empty land as well. You might think a vacant plot of land is just passively sitting there, gaining value, doing no harm. But physically, it requires continuous maintenance. You have to pay someone to pull the weeds. You have to clear away debris. You have to pay annual property taxes just for the privilege of holding on to it. Think about the massive opportunity cost here. The money you are continuously spending to cut the grass on empty land could have been deployed into an actual asset, something actively putting money in your pocket. Until it generates income, that land is just a relentless liability.
Finally, Section 5, the spiritual check. Let's look at our internal mindsets.
Having tackled the physical world of real estate and everyday business, we arrive at our final section. We are pivoting away from the external world of property and looking directly at the internal mindset of the individual. Because ultimately, the flow of money, it starts with you. We need to define the self in financial terms. You, the individual, are the ultimate generator or drainer of this energy we call money. Let's talk about what makes you a spiritual asset versus a spiritual liability. A spiritual asset means investing in internal inputs that generate future output. For example, spending time learning a new high-income skill, or practicing mindfulness to improve your decision-making clarity when you're under extreme stress at work, or consciously building a strong network of mentors. Those things pay you back. A spiritual liability is the exact opposite. It's doom scrolling on social media for 3 hours a night, completely draining your mental energy. It's maintaining toxic relationships that exhaust you emotionally, or holding on to deeply ingrained limiting beliefs about money. These spiritual liabilities drain your ultimate forms of capital, your personal energy, and your time.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that it represents the great internal battle of financial awareness. On one side, you have the habit of unconsciously taking money and energy out of your pocket. This is mindless spending, acquiring physical liabilities that are cleverly disguised as assets, and just generally ignoring the real flow of your resources. But on the other side is conscious awareness. By simply being here today, engaging with this explainer, you are actively doing the work. Reading, learning, and expanding your financial literacy is literally the physical act of watering the plant of your own mind. As the source notes, knowing more means more money for your pocket. Transitioning yourself from a spiritual liability into a highly valuable asset is a conscious, daily habit.
Which brings us to our final and maybe most provocative thought of the day. I want you to truly reflect on this as you go about your week. Are you an asset to yourself, or are you a liability to yourself? Are your daily habits generating value and putting money in your pocket, or are your unconscious actions constantly draining your resources? The next time you pull out your wallet to buy something, or even just decide how to spend your precious weekend time, ask yourself, is this making me an asset or a liability? By applying the simple pocket rule to your own behavior, you completely regain control over the energy of money. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep this rule in mind, keep consciously building your assets, and I will see you next time.